Good morning and welcome to the TitleOne Exchange Mid-Year Economic Forum. I'm Cameron McFadden, President of TitleOne Exchange, and we're very excited to have everyone viewing this today. It's been a strange and different year, as all of us know. Our keynote speaker was slated to be Governor Brad Little, and he has graciously agreed to be part of a virtual presentation that we're going to do for you today. We've gone out to all of our customers and solicited questions that we were going to give to the governor in his office here in just a few moments. I also want to take a moment to thank our team that put this event together. These events are difficult to put on and take a lot of teamwork. So I want to thank everyone for all the work and effort that went into that. So without further ado, let's go talk to the governor. Welcome to the TitleOne Exchange Company Economic Forum, and specifically welcome Governor Little to the 2020 version of the TitleOne Exchange Economic Forum. I'm Cameron McFadden. I'm president of TitleOne Exchange Company, and this is Jason Vickery, our president of TitleOne. We've been doing this about 10 years now, and this is by far the most different environment we've been in. So I just wanted to thank you for being with us and being very flexible with us in how we produce and develop this presentation. I also want to take a minute and thank you very much for your leadership. These situations are very hard that you're working in right now, and I'd say it's a bit similar to our world in underwriting and title and escrow in that it's very hard to quantify the success you have by the losses you avoid. And we are very often criticized for being too conservative in the underwriting world in that area, and I see that's happening a little bit, but I just want to thank you for your leadership because we know these are hard times, and our industry has been in the forefront of that as it's been going on, so again, thank you. The format today is that we're going to give you the floor to open us up for a couple of minutes, and then Jason and I are going to ask you a few questions that we've collected from our customers and constituents in the commercial real estate space.
Good.
Governor, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, and thank you both. Thank TitleOne. You know, these are tumultuous times. 80 days ago, if you would have told me that we'd be wearing masks and the hospitality industry would absolutely be ground to a halt, that we went from just getting ready to announce record employment to having record unemployment in just a few weeks. We had more claims in 2 weeks this year, unemployment claims, than we did all of last year. The shock waves of this pandemic are obviously worldwide, and a lot of the industries that are impacted here aren't impacted about what's taking place within the state of Idaho. They're worldwide, whether it be demand for food products, demand for services, how people use their discretionary dollars, the loss of discretionary dollars. All of those have had a big impact. We're pretty fortunate in Idaho. We were one of the last states to have a confirmed case. We probably had cases here that we didn't have confirmed. And we were one of the first states to put down a concrete plan to open up our economy totally. By the end of June, 26th of June, almost all the restrictions will be off. Today, 95% of all the businesses in Idaho, today's the 20th of May, 95% of all the businesses that elect to be open can be open. Now, that doesn't mean they are open because they don't have a demand. My job is really one job, and that's prosperity for this generation and the next generation. But I can't have prosperity if people don't feel safe, if they're concerned about themselves, their families, their employees, their customers and consumers are concerned. And so the nexus between safety and prosperity is a lot greater than some people talk about. They say, well, there's the economic side and the health safety side. No, there's not. It's the same issue. And that's the better we do at making people feel safe and be safe, the better we'll be able to restore the economy. We've been pretty unique in Idaho in the fact that our stay home order was really a lot less restrictive. Those of you that deal in other states know that, you know, in Washington, auto sales, construction, golf courses, waterways, travel was significantly more hampered than it was here. So we had one of the least shutdowns, and we'll be opened up faster than the other states. But that still means that all those things, mask, social distancing, all those things that have been recommended are going to have to continue. I was on a call with, I was on a call with all the legislators today, the House one call and the Senate the other. I said, if you would have told me 70 days ago that we'd be wearing masks in Idaho, I'd have said you're crazy. That's something that you see when you travel either nationally or internationally. But the bottom line is these work. Particularly they protect the people around you. So life's going to be different. The only thing I can promise you is that the recovery in Idaho is, I am very confident, is going to be faster and better than the recovery in other states. So with that, I'll try and answer your questions.
Thank you. Jason's going to lead off for us.
Yeah, and as Cam mentioned, really we gathered questions from all around the state from our customers, and so we'll get going and just kind of fire away. And right out of the gate, you know, there's been a lot of feedback on data. Where are states getting their data? What data is good? What data is not? Can you talk through that just with the state of Idaho and what you guys are looking at here at the governor's office? Just what data are you using as it relates to COVID, and what are you seeing with that data?
Well, early, even in January, when the coronavirus, the Asia, our epidemiologists were looking at it. That's what they have to do. Dr. Chris Hahn, our state epidemiologist, we're very blessed. She's been here in Idaho for 25 years, and I believe she's one of the best epidemiologists, state epidemiologists there is. And then we're very fortunate that Carolyn Bridges, Dr. Carolyn Bridges, who's a Idaho girl.
Right.
Matter of fact, her sister is our HR director for the state of Idaho. She had come back and retired, and so she's voluntarily sitting on our coronavirus working group that's chaired by Dave Jepson, the head of the Department of Health and Welfare. So we aggregate our own data, whether it comes from the health districts or the health department. We work in conjunction with the hospitals, and then we rely on the guidance we get from the Center for Disease Control. So those are the filters that we run everything through. The criteria to open up, the staged opening up, that you can go to corona.idaho.gov and see those criteria there. We can continue to make that better, but the most important factor is that we have surge hospital capacity. Doctors, it's three components. It's the equipment, it's the beds, and it's the healthcare workers. And those are the things that are very critical to us, that if we have a run, like we did in Blaine County and in Magic Valley, we've got that healthcare capacity to address those people most in need. And that data is all available. It's kind of run through the recommendation of the CDC, and it's aggregated to the Department of Health and Welfare.
Okay, awesome, thank you. So kind of the second question, and you know, at TitleOne here, we've had the advantage of being part of a bigger company. We were able to learn from a lot of other sister companies back in New Jersey, New York. You know, this hit them before it got here. Are there any other states or anyone else that you know Idaho was able to look at and learn from and kind of be ahead of the game on some of this?
Well, yeah, absolutely. These are kind of lonely times for governors.
Right. Yeah.
And so I was just on a call an hour ago with, I think, 40 governors, Republican, Democratic governors. I probably have 2 calls a week collective with governors, and then other calls singularly with governors. Charlie Baker, who's the governor of Massachusetts, you know, Charlie would get on the phone and we'd say, yeah, we're up to 20 deaths. And he goes, Brad, I had 1,000 yesterday.
Right. Yeah.
And so we learned from those states that have real critical problems. And then Mike Dunleavy, who's the governor of Alaska, who I think I had 3 calls with last year, he's got a very, very minimal problem. Matter of fact, last week we were a little short on gowns for our PPE, and Alaska sent us down some gowns. So we are learning from everyone. Mark Gordon in Wyoming, Steve Bullock in Montana, Gary Herbert. I was just on a call with Gary from Utah. I've talked to both Governor Inslee and Governor Brown. So these are, as I said, lonesome times for governors. So I guess we take some solace in hearing how bad the problems, but also the solutions, because these are really problem solving, just like a business would, particularly a big affiliated business like TitleOne. Here's my problem, what's working in your area, and we do a lot of that.
Okay, yeah, very similar to us right now, so cool, thank you.
So Governor, I'll ask the next couple of questions. So this one's about separation of powers, and it's one of the interrelations of the government bodies is often confusing for many of us. So if you could please help us understand that relationship between the cities and the state in particular. And my first question related to that is, what's the communication plan, or how does that work when you're working with the cities? Are they involved in that dialogue, and what's that
Yes,
look like?
we have weekly, every week, I have a call with all the House, all the Senate, all the mayors, and all the county commissioners. Then on a more tri-weekly, hospitals and long-term care facilities. But the cities in particular, because in essence, I can put in a set of rules over the whole state. The cities are the ones that regulate their cities. They can't do less than I can, but they can do more.
And that was my next question, is they're allowed to be more restrictive
Yes.
if they want to, not less?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And along that group are business leaders? Are you talking to, and I think you've alluded to that, but how do you involve the business and the community as well in that process?
Well, I've got a couple business leaders, one large business, one small business, on our advisory group that's given us advice and counsel about the $1.2 billion we got from the federal government. And then I've got another statewide, much larger business group of both large, small businesses all over the state that are giving us recommendations on what we do about opening up, what we do to promote business. I think there's a recommendation that we're going to be putting out right away about what we need to do to promote confidence in consumers, confidence in business coming back, how we allocate money out to businesses. We got 1.2, all the small states did. We got 1.2 billion, which to a guy from Emmett sounds like a lot of money. For coronavirus issues. And most states burnt right through that money. In Idaho, we're quite a bit more conservative than those other states. So there's some money that's available for cities, some money that's available for counties. My health districts are going to get more money. Health and welfare is going to get more money. We're doing some for communications, but we're going to we took the biggest chunk of any of the states and put $300 million into a program to go out to small businesses. Last week it was from 1 employee to 19. This week it's from 20 to 49, and the next week it'll be to sole proprietors. We were the first state to put that program out. I guess if flattery is, if imitation is the truest form of flattery, several states have taken our model, and we're putting that out. That was a recommendation from the businesses. These are companies that fell through the cracks. They didn't get PPP loans. We had $2.5 billion that went out in PPP loans in the state of Idaho. I know one bank alone that put out $350 million in SBA loans and those PPP loans.
That's tremendous. So kind of touring around the state, because our footprint goes all over the state, and we see a large variety of actions along those lines by the cities. And do you have thoughts, or can you give us thoughts on how you think they're aligned, like starting up in Coeur d'Alene, with the plans they've rolled out there, And then, we can maybe move to Boise in terms of they're a little bit more strict
Well,
here in Boise, but.
It's kind of relative to where you are. I always talk about the fringe effect. Before we did our statewide order, the mayor here in Boise closed things down, and all that behavior just went across the street to Garden Valley or Garden City. And that's the kind of behavior you don't want to have, because high spread areas go to low spread areas. And I've got a lot of communities that say, we're different, we have no cases here, let us open up. And I said, do you really want to be a sanctuary city for people going to bars at 1 o'clock in the morning? And the bar owners think it's a good idea, but most community isn't very excited about it.
Yeah.
So we're trying to minimize the fringe effect as best we can. We know we'll be opened up, and we did last weekend in Coeur d'Alene prior to Spokane, and there's a significant amount of traffic from the Spokane that's coming into the Rathdrum, Post Falls, Coeur d'Alene area, and some of the owners are pretty excited about it, but a lot of the community is not, because they have some community spread in Spokane, and they're concerned about that. We had our golf courses open, and there was a lot of grumbling in Coeur d'Alene about all those people from Spokane and taking up all the good tee times at their golf courses. So we will have probably more local openings and closings as we go forward. But to get through this these first steps to make sure we got enough healthcare capacity, enough personal protective equipment, the statewide model works better. We have limited capacity in our hospitals and our healthcare. We're either last or second or third to last in the number of doctors per capita. Some of these counties that don't have any problem have no healthcare capacity. If they have a big explosion there, it goes to the next county, and I'm responsible for healthcare for the whole state. And that's why, for the most part, I'm trying to apply these standards on a statewide basis rather than a community by community basis.
Thank you. That makes sense. It's very helpful. Shifting gears a little bit, let's talk about something that's important with or without COVID, and that's taxes and economic incentives. And Idaho has been winning some battles lately in attracting businesses. Business migration has been positive the last few years, and we'd like to see that continue. In your estimation, where do we stand today, especially with our sister states, in being able to attract businesses?
Well, Idaho has always been a very unique state in the fact that we've got 1, 2, 3 states around us without income taxes, 2 states around us without sales taxes. Everybody's got property taxes. Our property taxes are some of the lowest, but what do you hear people complain about? Property taxes.
Yep.
And the fact that we've got sales taxes, income taxes, and property taxes, that they call it the old three-legged stool. That's what kind of keeps things going. And the fact that we got 2/3 of our state that doesn't generate any money, that federal land that we all love to recreate and play on and have, and we got way too many roads. We got more miles of road per capita than Washington, Oregon, Nevada, or Utah. And so our road expenses are always going to be higher. And so we've got those challenges that we need to cover. But we saw 90 days ago, we were one of the fastest growing states. So granted, we have income taxes, we have corporate and personal income taxes, we have sales taxes, but it has not prevented us from growing. I know for certain that there's some businesses that would rather be in an area where they don't have an income tax. Washington doesn't have an income tax, but they've got a B&O tax, a business and occupation tax, that's way more onerous to production. Matter of fact, we've got people that have all their production in Idaho, and they live in Spokane, so they don't have to pay income taxes. Imagine why that would ever happen.
Right. Thank you. So along those lines, is there anything, and maybe these things have had to be tabled, granted, but looking out in the future, is there anything on your agenda that we need to fix or change to help attract more business? Or
always. But right now, we've got to get through this wreck. My highest priority up until 90 days ago was education.
Right.
And I don't want to tip that over. I've got a call here right after this where I'm going to talk to all the teachers around the state and tell them what I see going forward around the state of Idaho. So a massive tax increase or decrease is probably not in the cards. There might be something coming up pretty soon that a lot of your members will be interested in. We're just tinkering around with it today that I think will be helpful. We're not going to increase taxes, which is what most of the other states are looking at right now. We think our revenue is going to be down somewhere between 9 and 14% for next year. We've already made some plans. Oregon's talking about 30 to 35%.
Wow. Thank you, Jason.
So, Governor, you hit a little bit on one bank loaning out $350 million. I heard a similar story. One bank doing more loans in 2.5 weeks than they did all the previous year. Have you seen or been able to track any of the impact that those SBA loans have, the PPP loans have been able to make?
I had lunch 2 days ago with, I think, probably the banker of the year. There was one of the banks that handled a lot of the volume, and he said that these businesses, they said it was a godsend. They were right on the edge of going out of business. Our grants are to fill in the gap of those companies that either didn't get it, didn't qualify for it, or they didn't get enough to really matter. And so we're basically kind of a safety net for those companies. But, you know, Congress passed those bills. We're implementing them here in Idaho. But what I got to do is get the economy back going so people can go back to getting that source of revenue where they want to have it come from, which is the consumers, instead of from a government check.
Yeah. What about corporate tax breaks? They're thought to promote investment. Does the corporate tax structure offer a fair distribution of those tax payments?
I mean, our corporate taxes is the rates today are as low as they've been since the 1930s. So from that onset, and you know, I talked about Washington. They don't have any income taxes, but their B&O taxes is a higher effective rate than our business rate here if you pay the B&O tax. Utah's another example. Ours is 6.92, theirs is 5, but the effective rate, if you take $1,000 of the income, take all the deductions we have in Idaho, take all the deductions they have in Utah, the net effective rate is lower in Idaho for some taxpayers than it is in Utah. So it will be a barrier to some people. There's no question about it. And if every time we come to a fork in the road, we continue to dial it back a little bit, I think that's the best policy. But right now, I've got to have enough revenue to pay for essential services and to not have to make draconian cuts in public safety and education.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
You've addressed this a little bit already, but just wanted to expand a little bit on the infrastructure discussion that you touched on. And you mentioned how revenues are going to be down. With that in mind, do we need a contingency plan to fund infrastructure plans in the future based on this? Is there something that we're doing there?
Well, during the legislature in much different times, it seems like these coronavirus is like dog years. 1 year turns into 7. It seems like it's been so long. But I was advocating to some of my legislative friends because interest rates were so low, and we had such a good source of revenue that we should have done Garvey 2.0. We should have borrowed money, but put aside a source of revenue to pay for it to do some of the critical infrastructure. I advocated that to the chairman of the Transportation Committee, but you know, it's election year, election day was yesterday, so maybe it'll have a different tone now. And now it's going to take a little time to get through this But we do need to put some more money into infrastructure. I've been an advocate for it, but because of our great credit rating, because of the fact that we've got money in the bank, we're gonna have a lot less at the end of this than we anticipated. I think we ought to do some more investments we absolutely have to do some more investments in transportation. And of course, fuel taxes are gonna be way down because people aren't driving, so there's gonna be an impact there. My sense, talking to the other governors, and Congress is looking at a $3 trillion, it just seems like a lot of money to a guy, a $3 trillion package. I think some of that's gonna go to infrastructure, be from the federal government, but I have never been somebody that wants to rely on the federal government. I think we ought to work on these problems ourselves. We are going to take some of the CARES money that we can take and put it into internet technology, because that falls within the parameters. Remote delivery that's necessary because of the coronavirus. We're helping local entities of government and schools with broadband connectivity. But for roads, I think there's going to be some federal dollars, but when we get past this, it's going to be a high priority for the state.
My next one's very contentious in a place like Idaho where we don't like taxes, but my question is there any discussion of regional user taxes or local option taxes to help pay for some of this stuff?
Well, I think I'm on record saying, I think any local option tax the legislature would pass, I'd probably sign. That's just a guess. I'm not going to make a commitment until I see it. But I worry about the regional aspect of it. I worry about, here's an example. If you took Boise Town Square Mall, which up until a year ago was a real thriving area, and said, we're going to put a local option sales tax there. Well, everybody from all over the Treasure Valley that comes here and spends money, they could have gold-plated sidewalks and everything else, but that money's coming from everywhere else. So any local option sales tax ought to be broad enough to where the people that are paying it are getting the benefit. People that live in Middleton and Parma and Wilder and Caldwell that come here and spend their money on sales tax, some of that money should be at least allocated for the infrastructure, the roads going back and forth, and not spent there. That's my biggest issue on local option tax, that the rich don't get richer and the poor don't get poorer.
Yeah, good. One final kind of very narrow question over in eastern Idaho. We understand that there is a housing shortage or crisis in the INEL area and related to the FBI facility they've built over there. Can you give us any idea, are there any plans to help out with that problem?
Well, there's actually quite a bit going on over there. The ITD, if you go to Pocatello and you turn and head towards Idaho Falls, that Siphon Road project, there's a huge development going in there that's going to have a lot of lots, and that'll supply more than enough homes for that FBI expansion that's taking place in Pocatello. When you get to the lab, go over to Idaho Falls. I just had lunch this week with a developer over there that they're platting houses, they're putting in houses. My view from this chair in this office in this building is the best we can do for those local communities is allow them to create an atmosphere to where residential development is successful, do what we can from a regulatory standpoint, do what we can from a state tax standpoint, but really economic development at the local level is really a local issue. How long does it take them to permit a subdivision? What are the restrictions on a subdivision? What do you do about multifamily housing next to a campus like the Idaho State campus? Those are local decisions. I just have to build an infrastructure in the state to where there's the least amount of bureaucratic friction to where those things can happen on their own.
So talking about state-owned properties. And I know the state owns and operates some properties throughout the state. And curious about one specifically, which not everybody might be familiar with. We would refer to it as the old HP site out on Chinden. How can you give us an update on how that has been, and then with the hindsight being what it is was that a good investment? Are we happy with that's done?
When that was proposed, it was back in my other job when I was lieutenant governor. It was the governor and some of the legislative leaders, and I looked at it and I thought that makes pretty good sense. That was a great move. We have centralized IT, we've centralized parking, we've centralized training, and it was a good buy. Might be a better buy today, but who knows? But bottom line here, we've got a lot less real estate than we had before. The state endowment, I could poke my head out the window of this building and point to half a dozen properties around here that used to belong to the state endowment that we've sold that are back in private hands. I'm just, private enterprise is faster on their feet, they're more nimble. I have to have capacity for our state agencies, but I don't know how much capacity I have to have. Like every business, we're already looking at how many square feet of office space we have to have.
Right.
Given what we've learned through this process about remote working, and that we have people in Department of Labor now, they're getting slammed over there right now, who in essence, we shut down offices, we quit renting offices, and they made a circuit around the communities with their laptop showing up in a library or a city hall or somewhere else to develop their services, so everybody didn't have to go to one location. Those people were moving. That's just good business practices. So having more real estate from the state isn't a big priority for me. I just want the most effective and efficient delivery of state services we can possibly have. But the HP campus was a great move. And tying it to healthcare, as we looked at the worst case scenario for a run in COVID cases, that campus out there is one of the places that we would put surge health capacity if we needed it. We could put in an emergency hospital there. Matter of fact, we've got a hospital facility in the queue if we need it, if we need surge capacity here. So that was a good buy. IT, centralizing IT, centralizing the cafeteria, centralizing training facilities. That was a good move for the state of Idaho.
And I think you touched on, so my follow-up question to that is, and I guess it would be predicated on opportunity, but do we have plans to buy more properties at the state level? Or?
That's if we need to, we'll do it. But I'm more about delivering services than I am in owning property. There's other people that are very efficient at owning property and more efficient than the state is. And I love to rely on private enterprise.
So my last question in that area is, there are stories that the larger cities in particular are starting to buy some properties, mainly for, I would guess, for surge capacity and to help care for the homeless. And any comment or thought, do you think that's a good practice?
No, absolutely. If you travel around the Pacific Northwest 90 days ago, and you go to the cities in Idaho, and you go to the big cities in the Northwest, Seattle, Portland, LA, San Francisco, and you see the homeless problems they have there, there's a reason all these people are moving to Idaho. Is because, and the mayor, the city council, all the philanthropic groups, the rescue mission have done an incredible job. We still got some people falling through the cracks, but they've done an incredible job. We have some sources of dollar, they're mainly federal dollars that we pass through from the state, from the Idaho Housing and Finance Authority to help with those. But homeless issues are best addressed by a local community rather than by the state.
Thank you. We just have a couple more questions.
Yeah, so I'm a Magic Valley guy. Ag's a big part of not only the Magic Valley, but the state of Idaho. Can you walk through just what, both at the federal level and state level, we're doing for our ag folks? There's been some awesome stories that have been featured really nationwide with potato farmer dumping potatoes and donating. We've seen dairies dump milk. What are we doing kind of in the ag sector to help out?
A lot. Just yesterday, the president signed I noticed one of the media outlets said it was 16 million. It was actually 16 billion.
Yeah.
There's a difference between the B and the
Pretty big one.
And in fact, I was with some farmers in the Magic Valley this week, potato farmers.
Yeah.
And and it's different. If you're a potato farmer that sells potatoes that go into the grocery store, you're doing pretty good. If you go into the food service, McDonald's, white tablecloth, it's brutal. It is really brutal. So it depends upon where you are in the food chain. The people that are in the good part of the food chain are very quiet.
Right. Yeah.
The people that are on the other side of the food chain are very concerned. But I believe that the price of milk has just ratcheted up a lot just in the last week. They were actually dumping milk before this happened, and it's because our producers in Idaho are so, particularly in the Magic Valley, are so incredibly efficient. But like the Chobani business is really good, right, because a lot of people that are at home are buying yogurt. But if you have dairy products or potato products that go into the restaurant business, it's brutal. And not only are we trying to help them, we're trying to help them convert their lines, anything we can do to help them convert their lines, but they have to be able to convert back also.
Right. All right, thank you. Yeah, and then kind of the last question of the day here is we're hearing a lot more about work from home models. You're talking about at the state level. We're at TitleOne working through that as well. What impact do you think that's going to have on the state of Idaho in particular, maybe in migration and what that looks like?
Well, our Economic Advisory Committee, when we had our first meeting, 2 or 3 of the big thinkers on there, they'd already come to that conclusion. Because in their conversations with their cohorts in Seattle, San Francisco, Portland, that though their fellow CEOs, their fellow businesses, their affiliates there, were thinking Idaho looked pretty darn good to them. We always complain about not having mass transit and big tall buildings in Idaho. What a blessing it's been to us. We didn't do it we didn't do it on purpose, but the fact that we didn't have those contact points that made the spread of this COVID virus so much faster. Governor Burgum, who's a good friend of mine from North Dakota, talks about transmissible moments. If you're in a rural western state, the number of transmissible moments are way different than you're in an urban area. And I think, and a lot of the deep thinkers think this pandemic is something that when we get done with it, we better be prepared for the next one. If you're a bright young guy or a large entrepreneur, your risk in Idaho, and that's my job, is to make sure that the risk and people are safe in Idaho. That means that those decisions about where do they deploy their next big capital project, Idaho's going to be much further up the list than it was before.
Yeah, awesome. Well, Governor, we so appreciate you taking the time today. And again, a little different format, but this really has been our signature event. And so thanks for your time today and all your efforts.
Well, I hope I didn't put everybody to sleep.
Yeah, you did a great job. So thanks so much.
Thanks, Jason.
Thank you very much.
Hello, and welcome to our Office of the Future. I'm Logan Coulter from TitleOne, the VP Director of Sales and VP of the Treasure Valley. What you're seeing here is our new Office of the Future with a modern look and feel. When we developed the office, we really wanted to make the next Office of the Future at TitleOne. So this is what you're going to experience when you walk into our office in the future. We have 5 closing rooms. They're nicknamed after 5 of the most famous rivers here in the state of Idaho. We have the Clearwater, the Payette, the Salmon, the Owyhee, and the Teton. And every single one of our closing rooms are equipped for remote online notary closings. There's a screen and technology in every single room to enhance the closing experience. We also have a docking station. If you come into our office and you're waiting for a closing and you want to work, we got that for you. Plug in, get your work done right here in the comfort of our home, which is also your home. So welcome to TitleOne. There truly is a difference, and I hope you feel that when you come into our home.
Thank you guys for tuning into this year's TitleOne Exchange Mid-Year Forum. We hope you enjoyed the interview with the governor earlier. Really excited for the year ahead of us here in not only Idaho, but Washington and Utah now. we look forward to seeing you guys hopefully in person next year as well. And thanks for all you do for TitleOne and our exchange program.
Hope to see you soon. Thank you.